All right, here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the show. Look at this. This is a case that is much different than the Karen Reed trial. I mean, this is extremely different. We kind of know what happened here. For the most part, this is not a question of what the heck happened. This is more of a question of, well, what does it mean? What does it mean? Right? The conduct, the set of facts, there'll be slight differences of opinions about what sort of happened here. But for the most part, everyone's in agreement about what was going on. Like everyone is completely agreeing to what is going on in this case. But the big question for Alec Baldwin is, what does it mean? What does it all mean? So I got some things to show you. And obviously, the trial starting today. It's on the West Coast. So it's actually, I think they're back in court right now. Speaking, they've been taking a couple of breaks here and there, but they're in there. So I wanted to talk about this now, but I may be doing some of the live streams for this particular case in the mornings a little bit earlier. So court's not in session. So you may see me streaming, closer to 9 a.m. Eastern, in that sort of range. We may do morning ones for this particular trial because of the time difference. So if I'm talking about Alec Baldwin, today I'm going to talk about it this time, but generally people are watching, a lot of people are watching the trial right now, as a matter of fact. So I've got it on my Court TV app as well. So I'm keeping track of what's going on there as well. So, this is a question. I look at this case, right? And my general thoughts about these types of cases brought by prosecutors are like, well, this is behavior that everyone agrees was unintentional. No one wanted this result. There was no criminal mindset, whether it's the armorer, the assistant director, or Alec Baldwin. Like, no one went to work intending this to happen. This is the last thing that anyone wanted to happen that day, right? So it's unintentional, accidental behavior, right? Now the question is it criminally negligent is the standard, right? And we've seen other cases where people, the police officer out in Minnesota who thought she had a taser in her hand is screaming, taser, 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 and fires her service weapon. And she gets convicted and she goes to prison. So there are situations, and prosecutors are getting much more aggressive around the country with this, where unintentional behavior is being criminally prosecuted. Personally, as a former prosecutor, I generally don't like these cases. I generally don't. I mean, to me, there's got to be something above and beyond. Like perhaps, to me, operating on someone under the influence of alcohol as a doctor and your patient passes away. Yeah, I could see criminal responsibility there. It's the same with drinking and driving. But in this case, the case of the police officer, I'm like, no, but this is where we are. 2 people have been charged already. 2 people have been convicted already. So the question is, does the actor get a pass when it comes to gun safety protocols and being held responsible criminally, not civilly? Civil case is like a no-brainer here, but criminally for his role in what happened that day. And this is how I want you to look at it, because I know the response of a lot of people is, well, he didn't load the gun or he didn't bring the live round on there. That's not his job. Okay, I get it. But if you're going after everyone else who touched the gun, why would you not go after the man who was holding the gun when it was discharged? Listen to what I have to say. You ready? Because I think a lot of people are looking at this, like one thing caused this to happen. And that's not the case. It took four things to happen. Four things. First, someone has to introduce a live round onto the set of this movie. Now, we don't know who that is. We don't know. Investigators could not figure out how the live round ended up on the movie set because a lot of people were in CYA mode. You had a supplier. You had the armorer who was also bringing things in. Did the armorer bring it from her home? Did the supplier accidentally mix up live rounds and dummy rounds? We don't know. So whoever introduced that live round has not been held responsible because investigators weren't able to figure out who that was. So that's the first thing that needed to happen. The second thing that needed to happen was after that live round ended up on the set of the movie, then the live round had to be placed into a weapon that would be handed to one of the actors in this Western. That's the armorer. That's Hannah Gutierrez. She was convicted. Okay. So that's the second thing that has to happen. Then once it's loaded, then the assistant director who was in charge of safety overall and the supervisor of the armorer does the check of the gun. This is like the second, like the first check should be the armorer ensuring that there's no live rounds. Then the assistant director who takes a look at it is supposed to make sure that there are no live rounds. But from his own testimony, he only checked 3 out of the 6. 3 out of the 6. So he's only checking 3 out of 6. Assistant Director David Halls. He's responsible. So that's now 2 gone. 3 people, 3 things. Introduction of the live round into the weapon checked, but not checked. Okay. So if no one introduces the live round, this doesn't happen. If the live round isn't placed into the weapon, this doesn't happen. If the assistant director does a safety check, a proper safety check, this doesn't happen. And now finally, we're at the final piece of this, incredible tragedy that never should have happened, but did. The fourth thing, the man holding the gun points it at someone and squeezes the trigger. Not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to do it. That's not supposed to be done. Okay? So if he doesn't point the gun at someone and squeeze the trigger, this doesn't happen. That's my analysis of this. So if you're going to hold responsible the 2 people in the middle, you haven't found the first person, why wouldn't you hold the 4th person? To me, they're all equally responsible. Each one played a role in this. Each one had to do something for this to happen. Because even if the armorer put the live round in there and the assistant director didn't check, if he doesn't point it and squeeze it, this doesn't happen. So my analysis of the case is that I see him no differently than the other 2. Personally, wouldn't have made this a criminal case against the other 2. But that's just my general thoughts about, to me, the most important element of most crimes is the mental element, the level of intent. Like you did something and you knew you shouldn't have done it. Here it's, negligent in the way you are doing something, but you're not doing it on purpose, right? You're not doing your job well. A lot of people fail in their jobs every day. We make mistakes. And there's civil court for that. And people are held responsible. People are held liable for that. And that has happened. There's some civil suits pending. Some civil suits have been resolved. But our system of justice is divided into 2 places for 2 things. But now let's get back to reality, where we actually are. And where we are is that the other two people are charged. So I also believe that justice should be even. I don't believe there should be an exemption because you're an actor. That's not my job. Well, it is your job. You're going to be handling deadly weapons as part of your job here. So part of your job is to keep everyone safe. Let me throw this out. And I want you to think about this. If the scene was about Alec Baldwin taking his own life, would he have been more careful with the gun? Think about that for a second. If the scene that he was rehearsing was about him taking his own life, would things have been done differently? I don't know. I tend to think that they would have. But I don't know. So I want to show you the actual scene now, because I think this is important. Let me, no. There we go. Is this it? Okay. All right. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to put up the actual scene because it was played in court today. I got to see which one it is. I think it's this one. Is it this one? Yeah, I believe it's this one. Okay, so I'm going to add this. So the defense actually played this, which it was interesting, right? So the defense is, you'll hear the defense attorney sort of describing part of what's happening here. The name of the character is Rust. The name of the movie is Rust. Alec Baldwin is playing Rust, who's this outlaw, and he's in a church and he's being confronted. But here's the actual scene. Now, this is the rehearsal before lunch. The tragedy happens after lunch. That is not recorded on video. That is not filmed. But this rehearsal was the before lunch rehearsal. So let's take a look at the actual scene that we're talking about.
I'm gonna go find some help.
I don't need no damn help.
You're gonna die if I don't.
He's wounded and on the run. Play again. Continue.
That voice you hear is Alec Baldwin's attorney. Here come the bad guys, or the good guys.
Arlen Rust. Need you stand up nice and slow, tossing your weapons you have.
He's on the church pew, bleeding, his hand gripping the revolver. He would defend himself against the men in the movie. Play.
One more. You good? Ready?
Arlen Rust. Need you get up nice and slow, tossing the weapons you have.
Well, how close can I get right there?
Joe, you want me to wait to give you that line till he lands? Till camera lands?
Yeah.
Yep.
7 minutes, one?
Yeah.
Draw your gun and look up and point your gun, okay?
Okay, which way? Camera right or left?
This side, for now.
So camera left for now.
I'll stand right here for you, Alec.
So whip it out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me get this all greased. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, ready? Okay, ready? Ready.
And set. Ready, and action.
Arlen Rust.
Do one more just like that. You got one more? Yeah.
Ready?
They want him to do it again. There's no danger. They want him to do it again.
Again, the voice is Alec Baldwin's attorney.
Arlen Rust. Nice.
All right. The bottom line here, right, is that we all agree he didn't do it on purpose, right? That's not the issue. The issue is what level of negligence and what level of responsibility does an actor have? So that's the actual scene. Now, one of the things that he said from the beginning, he told George Stephanopoulos, and he said before, and it seemed like the defense attorney was kind of talking about this as well, that it's not clear whether or not the gun was actually functioning properly. Right? I don't understand that because, and he didn't squeeze the trigger. Like if you look at this, I'm going to show you. I took a look at it and then put it in slow motion because I think this is important. As you watch it in slow motion, I'll kind of go back and forth with it. I mean, it's so clear that his finger is on the trigger, right? Like the argument that it wasn't there is absurd because in every rehearsal it was. This is the way he was rehearsing the scene. So this wasn't a malfunction of any sort. It wasn't a malfunction. There you go. Again, in slow motion. Look at it. And if you look at it right at the end, and I'll freeze it. And go back just a little further. Okay. Like, could it be any clearer? And again, remember the defense is showing this to the jury. So I don't know if in fact they're going to cling to this argument that the weapon malfunctioned. Like his finger is right on the trigger. And if he's pulling the hammer back and the trigger is depressed with any slight amount of force, it's going to discharge. That's just the way it works. You know, I'm not an expert in this, but I know that. I'm not an expert, but I know that. Like, just look. It's obvious. He said it wasn't there, but it's obviously there, and it was always there. That's why I never understood that it's so silly. Like the argument they're making is that everyone else is responsible except him. That's the defense in this case. And there's a lot of people that agree. I mean, almost every lawyer I've had on my show, almost every lawyer believes in the actor's exemption for gun safety. The actor's exemption. That's what it is. Because it doesn't apply to the assistant director. It doesn't apply to the armorer. It wouldn't apply, I guess, to whoever was supplying the dummy rounds. They're all responsible for their role in what happened here. But you can apply the famous legal but-for test to any of them. If this was a civil case, it would be called contributory negligence. They're all contributing to the negligence. Like, but for Alec Baldwin doing what he did, Helena Hutchins would be fine. But for David Hall's not doing what he should have done, Helena Hutchins would be fine. But for Hannah Gutierrez doing what she did, Helena Hutchins would be fine. But for the person, whoever it is, who introduced that live round to the set, Helena Hutchins would be fine. So I look at all four of those actions as being part of what happened here. And everyone else is latching on to the fact that he's not responsible because he's just an actor. He's an actor doing his job. Okay, was his job to point the gun at the director and squeeze the trigger? Was that his job? I don't think so. I don't think so. But maybe the evidence, maybe someone will testify that, yeah, that was his job. His job was to pull it out, point it right at Helena Hutchins, and squeeze the trigger. If that's part of his job. Do you, once you step onto the set of a movie, are you discharged of all of your responsibilities when handling a deadly weapon? Right? It's someone else's job. All right. That's the question. That's the question. And I asked the question, how could this happen? Well, I explained how it happened because four separate things had to happen for this result, and they all did. In the tragic perfect storm of conduct. But there were four distinct actions that had to take place. One person we don't know, the second person convicted, the third person convicted, and now Alec Baldwin on trial, charged. The jury will decide. Obviously, this is one of those cases where the jury is the finder of fact, but here they're also the conscience, where they have to determine, like, is this really the type of conduct that we criminally prosecute people for? Take away their liberty. Is this what it's for? We'll see. Again, this was just a rehearsal. They were blocking and rehearsing everything, so it wasn't like they were actually recording or filming the action. Some people I've spoken to have asked the question, which is, why do you even have the weapon during this scene? Other directors that I've spoken to say, when you rehearse the scene and you block the scene, you don't need the weapon. You bring that in only when you need to film it. And that's the last thing you do. And at that moment, you go through where everyone is going to stand and where everyone's going to be, exactly where the gun's going to go, which way it's going to be pointed. All of that is like rehearsed without the weapon, not with the weapon, but without, like a safety rehearsal. In addition to, blocking it out for creating the film, then there's a rehearsal that goes through to make sure everyone stays safe, because it's very common on these movie sets to have shields up that people stand behind who are on the other side of the weapons, even though they're not having the weapon pointed at them, they're on the other side. So obviously, a couple inches here, a couple inches there can make a big difference. That's not it. I've spoken with actors who said they will not accept a weapon until the armorer shows them that the weapon is safe. Like, not doesn't just tell them, but actually shows them and explains to them why it's safe, like right in front of the actor. That's what they demand. And by the way, it's in the SAG rules and regulations that an actor can demand that, can say, listen, you're handing me that, show me that it's safe, prove it to me. I want to see that there is nothing in there that could harm anyone in this room, including myself and everyone else. That didn't happen. So there are a lot of different ways that this could have been done. There are a lot of different ways that this is done. Part of the testimony you're going to hear in the case is from an industry insider who's going to explain how this is normally done. Now, there may be, some argument from both sides about, well, what is normal, what is not normal, what is required, what is not required. What are the standard procedures and guidelines of the industry? What aren't? Was there a deviation here or not? So I'll show you. Let me show you the scene one more time so you can see how it went down. And as we are watching this, I'm going to check some of the messages in the comments. Thank you to everyone for checking in today.
I'm gonna go find some help.
For those of you just joining us,
You're gonna die if we don't.
He's wounded and on the run.
because of the
Play again.
timing
Continue.
of the trial itself, I'll be doing these on Baldwin likely early in the day, on the front end in the mornings. And maybe once in a while, like afterwards, late at night.
You just stand up nice and slow, toss any weapons you have.
He's on the church pew, bleeding, his hand gripping the revolver. He would defend himself against the men in the movie. Play.
One more. You good? Ready?
Arlen Rust,
Patricia says no exemptions.
did you get up nice and slow, tossing the weapons you have?
Well, how close can I get right there?
Joel, you want me to wait to give you that line till he lands? Till camera lands?
Yeah.
Yep.
7 minutes, one? Draw your gun and look up and point your gun, okay?
Okay, which way? Camera right or left?
This side, for now.
So camera left for now.
I'll stand right here for you, Alec.
So whip it out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me get this all greased. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, ready? Okay, ready? Ready.
And set. Ready, and action.
Arlen Rust,
Do one more just like that. You got one more? Yeah.
It was interesting because
Why don't we
the
do it again? There's no date.
prosecutor described it as a slow draw, and that's not what I'm seeing. This is like a fast draw. And it seems like that's the instruction from the director, whose voice you also hear. So on the other side of Alec Baldwin, you have the cinematographer who's figuring out the shot, and you got the director, Joel Souza, who was right by her, watching Alec rehearse this scene and block this scene.
Danger. They want him to do it again.
And set. Ready, and action.
Arlen Rust, nice.
Now, this is interesting from Cynthia. I can't stand Alec Baldwin, but I don't feel it's his fault crazy. But I feel the one in charge of the weapons are the ones. All right. And that's fair. And the jury may come to that conclusion. To me, I see them all part of what happened here. Like, it's not just the actions of one person that caused this to happen. It's more than one. It's not him alone. It's not the armorer alone. It's not David Halls alone. All of, and that's the way it's set up. I mean, it's set up in a certain way that this shouldn't happen. Like all these things, like where did the live round come from? Shouldn't we know that answer? We don't. Will the jury hold that against the prosecution? I don't know. They didn't in the trial of Hannah Gutierrez because that question was not answered. It just was not answered. All right, Ernie Birdie. It's just a very unfortunate situation. He's going to need to show some humility or he's going to ruin himself. I don't think he's going to testify. They've got all his statements. You know, obviously he's used to speaking. He's used to the spotlight and obviously has told this story many times. Like he didn't like lawyer up right away. He didn't refuse to, he cooperated from the beginning. And I think, but everyone cooperated from the beginning. Didn't stop the jury from holding the armor responsible. Now, something that some of the locals have told me, and I saw something from Gun Tote in Arizona over there. The folks in New Mexico are also very familiar with this. Now, the actual makeup of the jury, it skews, I think it's twice as many women than men. I don't think that really matters in this case. I think the issue that matters is, I think Second Amendment people, if there's Second Amendment people, if you're the prosecution, that's who you want on the jury, because those are the ones who believe in following the rules and the safety, everything. Like they understand that. The people who aren't owners, who aren't users, who aren't hunters, people like me are probably the ones you want on the jury for the defense. Although I don't know what I would do here, you know, knowing that the other people are being prosecuted as well. It would be tough. It would be tough. But we don't day to day understand. I just know from covering trials, because this issue comes up more than once, right? It comes up more than once. Folks, make sure you hit the like button and make sure you are subscribed. Thank you, Melly. And what is this? Lisa's saying mistrial. Stop. Stop already. Stop. Cynthia, I can't believe I'm defending the creep. LOL. Right? And that's something else I wanted to bring up. Which is, I was there at the Johnny Depp trial. I'm going out to this trial next week out in New Mexico. If anyone's in Santa Fe, come on by, say hi. I'll be there at the courthouse. The Johnny Depp trial, the scene at Johnny Depp was lots of fans and some media. Like there was media there. Like, yeah, it was a media event, but it wasn't, but there were so many more fans than media. This case, Alec Baldwin, it's like all media and there's not a lot of fans. Like he's a great actor, right? He's a really good actor. He's a comedic actor. He's a dramatic actor, has a very long career, had some very iconic roles, whether it's television, movies, or on stage, all of that. Yet he is so polarizing. And there are so many people who don't like him. But as you saw in the chat here, some people who, despite the fact that they don't like him, still don't believe he should be held responsible. I think this is an uphill battle, this trial for prosecutors. I don't think it's one they are necessarily going to lose, right? I mean, like he was holding the gun. Right? Like he was holding the weapon. So I'm Gen X to the 7th power. Hey, Pixie, everyone is hot today. Yeah, it's hot everywhere. It is hot everywhere. It is hot everywhere. Marianne says all of them responsible. I agree. All of them responsible. Marianne watching on Facebook. And what is that picture? Marianne, what is that picture? Is that like a head on a plate on a table? What is that? That's amazing. And Shaza Sheehan, all about saving money. He didn't go to safety meetings, so he wasn't interested in safety of him and his colleagues. He is at fault. Now, there was a big pretrial win for, thank you, big pretrial win for the defense. Prosecution wanted to paint the picture that he wasn't just the actor. He was the producer in charge of this whole set. And they were cutting corners and safety was an ongoing issue and they were doing nothing about it. That's out. Judge is not permitting that. So they're just going to hold him accountable or attempt to hold him accountable as an actor, not as the producer of the movie. But it's clear to me that his role and who he is impacted what happened. And what I mean is he's the big cheese, right? He's the big cheese. When Alec Baldwin's on the set of that movie, he's in charge of everybody. Like, I know people should like, if you're in that position of safety, you need to stand up to him. But if you're a 24-year-old armorer, are you going to tell Alec Baldwin what to do? Now it's your job to do it, but are you really going to do that? And if you did, what would happen to you? Right? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. This is that was his wife, Hilaria. She's in court. Stephen Baldwin is there. I think Alec's sister's there. And in this photo, you can see Stephen Baldwin over his left shoulder, Hilaria further over. And I think next to Stephen, that might be Alec's sister is there as well. Not clear how many other family members will show up. Like, you're in Santa Fe, you're not in LA, you're not in New York. But he is on trial and he could go away. If he's found guilty, he'll get 18 months. He'll get what the armorer got. The judge is not going to treat him differently than the armorer, I don't think. And Tammy's saying he's doing his job. The others didn't do their job. Right? So who else? And I'll put this out there. There might be other. I'm trying to think of other situations where someone could be handed a weapon and not have to check it, not have to insure, and would not be held criminally responsible for aiming it at someone and squeezing the trigger. Is there any other situation, or is it just an exemption for actors that we're talking about here? LS, Chester's mom, have my MFA in acting, directing, producing, worked for over 20 years in the unions, and I was always taught as an actress to check any weapon no matter who also checked it. I was the last check. Yeah, and if you're not comfortable or trained in actually checking the weapon, then you have the armorer by your side, and you can say, hey, check the weapon. Show me, prove to me that that's okay. Don't just tell me. It's interesting because I had Rick King on. He's a great lawyer and former police lieutenant, and he's totally on board, believing Alec has no responsibility here. And I asked him, what if you're chief? You're a trained officer, but what if your chief handed you a weapon and said, it's not loaded? What would you do? And his answer was, of course, yeah, I check it. Of course you would. Of course you would. Even though, like, the chief told you, like, here, yeah, I don't, it's cold. It's not loaded here. Of course he's going to check it. I don't know. I first of all, I don't understand why they even use real ones these days anyway. Like, why do we even bring them onto sets? It seems silly. It's, even a low budget movie has a budget. So why not like use an actual prop rather than a real one used as a prop? Mila Plume or Milla. Hi, Vinny. Love your 8 p.m. show and these podcasts. Thank you so much. 8 p.m. Obviously, we're going to be all over this case, bringing you the big moments of the day, live reports. I'll be out there next week, but also diving into some of the very specific issues with experts and insiders from the industry to kind of get a clear picture of what's going on here. Gen X to the 7th, no exemption. They are not special being an actor. And Daniel, is Daniel intimating some level of conspiracy here? Sabotage? Incompetent investigators couldn't find the person who sabotaged Alec. Yeah, I don't think, like, sabotage, I take that to mean someone did it on purpose. And I think initially, investigating it, they had to consider that, because why on earth would it be there? Why would anyone bring a live round onto the set of a Western, like a Western, where there's just weapons everywhere, ammo everywhere? Why would you do that? But I think it was a mistake. Part of the backstory is there was an actual shortage of the dummy rounds. They were having trouble locating enough dummy rounds to fill all the weapons that they needed to fill. Now, for those of you who don't know, there are blanks which look much different than a live round, but actually fire. They make the sound, they make the blast. Those are blanks. Then you have dummy rounds, which look exactly like live rounds. Slight difference sometimes in the way the back of them may have a little indentation, but it's up to the armorer. You have to inspect each one and you shake it, because I guess once they make it a dummy, they fill it with sand or they fill it with something. So you shake it and then it's a dummy. Then you can use it. But you're supposed to inspect each one, not just grab them from a box that says dummies and put them in. No, you take one. It takes time. Dozens of actors, dozens of weapons. One piece of ammo at a time needs to be checked. And it wasn't. Michelle L., there is reasonable expectation for any person handling a weapon to exercise a certain level of caution, in my opinion. I find it interesting that the judge kept out that he was the producer with the bigger responsibility to ensure safety measures. Yeah, I mean, and it's not just that he's the producer; he's also Alec Baldwin. He's the A-lister. And anytime the A-lister is on the set, the A-lister is in charge. Like the star of the show is in charge. And in a low budget independent production like this, right, where the other actors you may or may not recognize, like he's a legitimate A-list celebrity. So what he says goes. Plus he's a producer. Not relevant to this jury. So that huge win for the defense. Huge win for the defense because it becomes a little bit of a different trial. It becomes a little bit of a different trial. These are the two prosecutors, special prosecutors. You're in Santa Fe, New Mexico, small office. They brought in special prosecutors to try this case. It took a while to get there, but we finally are there. Opening statements today, 8:00 tonight, full coverage on my show on Court TV. So make sure you join us for that. Thank you, Michelle. Ginny NYC. Hello, Vinny. Remember when Brandon Lee was shot and killed on the set? The revolver was loaded with blanks. The gunpowder in the blank ignited. Co-star that fired was never ceremonially charged. Okay. I'm not sure what they were. I don't know what they were doing with the blanks. I think they didn't know that blanks can be extremely dangerous. I think people on most sets understand and realize the difference. And they were using the term, and it was a specific word. It was cold gun. And cold gun doesn't mean no live round. It means no rounds at all, including blanks. Nothing that will fire. Just dummies, which are just cosmetic. Like the dummy rounds look like a live round, but they don't do anything because there's nothing in there. So they are there for show. So it looks like a weapon is loaded when it's loaded with dummies, not live rounds. Because if you loaded it with blanks, it wouldn't look like it was loaded because a blank is physically looks much different. Maureen McDermott should have been a civil case. It is. It wasn't intentional, and he was told it was a cold gun. He also, in his interview, said, I assumed. Well, is that the level of due care that someone handling a weapon should exercise, that you assume that there's nothing in it? That's the issue. And again, this trial it's complicated in trying to figure out where the round came from. It's complicated in trying to figure out who did exactly what, because there's a little bit of discrepancy between the different prop people and the assistant director and the armor as to who was doing what. And the hierarchy on the set is today, what we're talking about here is pretty straightforward. It's just, and this is one of those cases for a jury where they have to be the conscience of the community and determine, is this the type of conduct that our criminal courts are for? So now, let's see who else is here today. Joyce, very straightforward, blaming the armorer. This happened because the armorer didn't do her job. But my response to that would be, and again, I wouldn't have charged any of them criminally. I think civilly, they all should be held responsible. But if we're going to prosecute accidental accidents that happen, unintentional conduct, then I think all or none. I don't think his job was to point and squeeze the trigger at that moment. That just wasn't part of the job. They were just doing the blocking. And I don't believe he was directed to squeeze the trigger, which is, I think, why he initially said, I didn't do it. I didn't pull the trigger. Mhm. LAW, give me a break. Hi, Jennifer. Great to have you aboard, helping us out, folks. Amber, hola. It always comes back to this. Why was it loaded? He didn't know. Because someone made a mistake. Somebody made a mistake. Two people made a mistake. First person made a mistake, introduced a live round to the set. The second mistake was the armorer putting that live round into the weapon. So 2 mistakes, why it's loaded. 2 more mistakes then happen where the assistant director doesn't do a proper check and Alec Baldwin points and squeezes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me get to this one. All right. Vinny, I'm confused as why an actor shouldn't pull the trigger. It's part of acting. Maybe there should be a criteria where the actor is culpable in all movies, but how long has he been acting and not checking, or any actor for that matter? He obviously pulled the trigger. It's been proven it didn't malfunction. I don't like Alec Baldwin. He's arrogant, but his job is acting, not gun safety. Maybe it should be. All great points, Carrie. Thank you. So I will answer part of it this way. Make sure you put. At this point, they're not filming. At this point, they're just going through and blocking and rehearsing. So I don't know why you would pull the trigger at that moment, because he even said he didn't, because it wasn't part of what he was doing then. So he accidentally squeezed the trigger as well. Someone accidentally introduced the live round. Someone accidentally loaded it. Someone accidentally didn't check all 6 rounds. And then someone accidentally squeezed the trigger while accidentally pointing it at someone. That's what happened. Mm-hmm. And the prosecutor is trying to take this jury, and it's really a battle of the prosecution saying a movie set is no different than anywhere else in life when you're handling a deadly weapon. There's no difference. Same rules apply. Same gun safety rules apply. And the defense is saying, no, they don't. No, they don't. For them to do their jobs, he needs to become this outlaw, and he needs to do whatever the outlaw would do with that weapon. And once he's handed that weapon, the safety part of the everyone's function is over. The actor has zero responsibility, according to the defense. Michelle L., I think it's clear he wasn't concerned about the safety because it wasn't his job. It's everyone's job to maintain safety. Negligence matters. I mean, isn't it everyone's job? I've heard little stories as I've been covering this story for years now. That Will Smith was on the set of one of his movies, a lot of weapons in his movies. And there's like the table that has the weapons, and another actor like picked one up and started doing something, and he smacked him down and like went after him, like not physically, but like explained to him how these things are handled on sets. And yeah, I get it. They have to be handled that way because they're using real ones. Still don't know why they're using real ones when they have the budget to make ones that aren't real but that can look real. Mhm. This is interesting from Cheryl Johnson. What about the grease they used to remove from the holster? Yeah, I heard him mention that, and you hear that as he's doing the rehearsal, talking about the grease to get it out quicker. And that goes to the speed of it, right? That may help the defense here because the prosecution was saying it was supposed to be a slow draw when it's quick draw. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Here's Carla. What if the first two didn't see a live round, but the third person sneak one in before Alec Baldwin got the handle on the gun? So we'll see how the testimony plays out, and the statements and testimony have been a little bit inconsistent about the actual who handed it to him. But originally I thought it was David Halls. Then I hear it's Hannah Gutierrez. Alec is saying one thing. Halls is saying something. Alec says something different. They've been all over the map on this, which tells me one thing, that the set itself was chaotic in that they didn't have a standard operating procedure for who handles and where the weapon goes from person to person to person. But I don't think there was an opportunity for that to happen once Halls got it. Because I think Halls checked just before it was given to Alec. But I think it was loaded before lunch, and then it may have been checked after lunch. Again, I've listened to the interviews, and there are levels of inconsistencies here. So we'll see how the testimony plays out during this trial. But I don't think, Carla, there's necessarily going to be a window of time for that to happen. The way I understand where it went and Hall's role in all of it. Salty Bird. Hi, Vinny. I think some extra spa time showing on Alec, maybe some Botox and facials. He's looking pretty good and amused. Oh, let's see. Let's take a closer look. There, he looks a little. This is during part of the opening statement. He was taking notes for a while, but then things got a little. And there you see Stephen and Hilaria, his wife to the right, and his brother just behind them. But his brother has some sort of hearing thing going on here. So I'm not sure what that's all about. But that's Stephen, who is Haley's father and Justin Bieber's father-in-law. All right, here's the actual scene. So you can see how tight of a set this was, right? There's not a lot of room, and not necessarily a lot of room between where he's sitting here in the pew and where everyone is set up. I mean, very close. Should there be more distance? Probably. Should there have been shields in place? Absolutely. And should they have been using the actual real weapon at that moment? I don't believe so. I don't believe so. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tina, the gun was destroyed. Why are we here? Yeah, big problem, right? You've got the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, testing the gun, and then for some unknown reason, taking a mallet and destroying it. It's absurd what they did. And honestly, I wouldn't be angry with this jury if they held it against the prosecution what the FBI did with that gun. It was uncalled for. So they tested the gun and they said the gun was operating properly. And then there was word that there were allegations that it was an accidental firing. So the gun inspector said, I could do one more test on it, but it may destroy the gun. And someone said, okay, go do it. Like, why? Like, the test was literally like taking a mallet and smashing the gun to see if it would discharge. Why would you do that test that had nothing to do with the alleged facts in this case? Completely unrelated. And the defense was bringing that up big time in the open. But that's more of a legal argument, Tina, because the defense did not get to independently test that weapon, and it was destroyed by investigators for seemingly no reason. That could be a situation where perhaps a judge would not allow certain testimony or certain evidence in a case based upon the actions of investigators, but that didn't happen. If he gets convicted, I'm sure it'll be on the list of appealable issues. But you have a point. I'm not happy with what the FBI did there. Not at all. And this is interesting from Scarlet Rose. Yeah, that's why Seth Kenney, Sarah Zachary, and Dave Halls need to be charged as well. Dave Halls he took a deal, pleaded guilty, took responsibility for his actions. Sarah Zachary from the first trial, she testified, and we were like, well, she destroyed evidence. Why wasn't she charged with destroying evidence? And Seth Kenney is her boss. He was the one providing ammo. Did he provide this ammo? It's not clear. It's not clear. But people were in CYA mode, and I was not happy with what Sarah Zachary did. And I was shocked that she was not charged, but she was given, I guess, some immunity from prosecution. It doesn't make sense to me. She literally threw away evidence. After this happened, they're like throwing stuff away. What? Who does that? Who does that? And then who does that and doesn't get in trouble for it? Sarah Zachary, apparently. You'll see her testimony. There are a lot of troubling. Here's Teresa. You have to cock the gun before pulling the trigger for the gun to go off. Maybe next time use replicas. Replicas, fakes. You know, you can make them with a 3D printer. You can make them look exactly like you need them to look, and then paint them so they look exactly like you need them to look. And what's happening here is touching the trigger and pulling back the hammer. You pull back the hammer, and if you depress the trigger, there's nothing to stop the hammer. If you just pull the hammer back, it'll stop. But if the trigger is depressed and you pull back the hammer, then it's going to release and it's going to fire. Ginny, NYC, question that needs to be asked. Would you point the gun at yourself without checking it first? Exactly, right? If that's what the scene was, if this was a scene about him, pointing it at himself, would things have been done a little differently? Maybe. Mouthy Mama, Grandma, Da. Thank you, Vinny, for another great show. Q&A is my favorite part. Thank you, Mouthy Mama. It's my favorite part, too. Oh, here we go. Nick 04. I think another job with an exemption is lawyer. If a prosecutor showed a jury a gun at trial and it went off and shot a juror dead, I'd say it wasn't his job to check. The first trial, the expert that was called to the stand pointed the weapon at the judge. True story. The expert, the gun safety expert on the stand at Hannah Gutierrez's trial, points the gun at the judge. It was insane. What you will see in most trials is that if a gun is entered into evidence, if a weapon, it will be checked and shown to be safe and demonstrated to the judge, to the witness, to the lawyers, to everyone else. They'll hand them to him and say, listen, I'm going to show you. Look, it's, this is safe. This weapon is now safe. Now we can do stuff with it. But it's still at that point. I've seen lawyers I can't remember if it was a lawyer or a witness, pick it up and point it towards the jury. Insanity. But in the first trial, and we'll show it to you a few more times. We showed it to you last night. Okay. Davinia. Love that pose. Who handed him the weapon? Why wasn't it checked first? It was either Hannah Gutierrez or Dave Halls, depending upon which statement you're listening to, who handed him the gun. And it was checked, but it wasn't properly checked. Dave Halls has admitted and testified that he only checked 3 of the 6 rounds, which makes why would you check 6? Like, the most important one to check is the one that's like lined up and ready to go. Why would you not check that? And no one's happy about this. Like, make no mistake, like, everyone is like sick as can be about this happening. But then when you get to like the criminal part of this, it changes a little bit. Like for Hannah Gutierrez and for Alec Baldwin, things change a little bit because now you're facing 18 months behind bars. And it's like, yeah, I feel bad, but Rhodes, great. Will Smith slapped someone, shocked. And Robert, we need the think tank crew in the 8 p.m. hour. That's where they are, baby. If you've been watching my show for years, you know the think tank's been in the 9 o'clock hour for quite some time. My first show was 6 to 9, so they used to be 8 to 9. Then when the show moved to 8 to 11, they went into I think they're in the 9 o'clock hour. Then when the show became 8 to 10, they stayed in the 9 o'clock. And now the tank is in the 8 o'clock hour, Robert. Right at you, buddy. All right. Don't forget, hit that like button. 3,400 today. You know, while things are streaming all over the net right now. So I appreciate that. All right. Let me just check this. I got to check something from work real quick. 1 second. One moment. I just have to stay on top of everything. All right. And excellent. So hit that like button and make sure you follow and make sure you subscribe and do all those things you're supposed to do if you're watching the show. All right. Gen X to the 7, the closing arguments just keeps getting better and better. Tune in. Tune in. Okay. Now the other Charlie, you know, there may have been private conversations because there was a settlement with her husband and children. Her siblings and parents have a separate civil suit that is still pending. But I haven't. I don't know if I haven't heard a public apology. I've heard blaming the other people. I know he was clearly impacted at the moment he found out what had happened, that she passed away. But publicly, I'm not sure. Now, the movie was made, and the movie's, I think, coming out, if it's not out already. I have not seen it. Great. I'm trying to remember from the first trial how this came out, what they figured out. Now, part of the problem, as the defense again pointed out during their opening statement today, is that the cart was not secured for days, and then the prop truck was not secured for like a month. So investigators were a little slow, or a lot slow, in kind of locking everything down and doing the appropriate searches. So that's part of the problem. But it's really like tracing the chain of custody. And you've got people in CYA mode. So it wasn't clear to me after the first trial where it actually came from, which to me is a shame. Again, something else pointed out by the defense during their open. All right, Beth wants to know, Beth Pankinen Immortal, what hours do you work, Vinny? I work all day. My show is 8 to 10 at night. My live stream is whenever I have time. My research and everything else is in between all those hours. And then obviously you have meetings to get ready, etc. So, and then, if I'm covering certain trials, I have to watch the footage of the trials. So it's a long day. It's a long day every day, but I got to get a little exercise in too, because I am type 1 diabetic. I think all of you know that. Part of the way I try to keep things under control is by getting out there and keep myself moving every day. Ooh, Brenda Lieb McChristie. I believe Alec B needs to do time history of hatred and bad temper in the past with his family. Yeah, well, and the question is, who shows up? Like, let's say he is convicted, right? There'll be a sentencing. At the sentencing, who is going to show up on his behalf? Who will speak up for him? And what will be really interesting is will anyone from her family speak? Will any members of the crew speak up? Members of the crew have filed civil suits as well for the trauma they endured, for witnessing this. It was traumatic, but at the end of the day, 2 people got the worst of it. What does Joel Souza think of all of this? Because he's a survivor, right? He was the second one struck by the single projectile. All right. Vinny, do you believe his finger was on the trigger or touching it? I don't know if there's that much of a difference. I think the motion of the cross draw and the motion of pulling the hammer back, if your finger is just touching that trigger, would create enough force that it would pull it. Unintentionally, but negligently, which is what the charges are. Negligence. Not doing it on purpose. So that's where we are. That's where we are. Oh, one more moment I wanted to show you. And I've got to grab a bigger piece of this. And tonight we're going to show you a bigger piece of it on the show, which is the responding officer, the first responding officer, has his body cam on, and you can see and hear a little bit of what Alec Baldwin is saying. So I wanted to play that for you right now as well. So let's take a look.
It was missed. The one that fired, we don't know on his request, and I witnessed them clear it and saw the bullets.
Okay. So
Only one was, they were all hot.
The one that was missed,
Objection,
the one that
Honorable.
fired, we don't know, but all the other ones were proper.
All right, so they're having a little conversation here about what happened. Now, obviously, at this point, they don't know that Helena's not going to make it. But you see Dave Halls, he's the assistant director. He's pleaded guilty. You see Alec Baldwin, third gentleman, I'm not sure who he is, but someone else working on the set. You know, if you've ever seen a movie in action, I mean, there are a lot of people, even in a low budget movie, there are a lot of people that are working. So it's not just, you know, a couple actors and a camera crew. No, there are tons of people everywhere, all with very specific roles. But Dave Halls is ultimately, as the assistant director, in charge of safety. And I think he pretty much very quickly knew that he did not do his job. And that is part of the reason I believe that he pleaded guilty so quickly. He also did not get time behind bars. So for his role in all this, he's sort of the middleman. But once again, if he does his job, this doesn't happen. If anyone did their job, this wouldn't have happened. The protocols and the safety measures that are in place, movie after movie after movie, just weren't happening here. Now, you do know another part of the story, probably not a part of the trial, but a part of the story is that there were people that walked off. There are people that walked off the crew because they felt like it wasn't safe. Because there have been some, I think 2 prior discharges of blanks, not live rounds, but of blanks that went off when they were not supposed to. And that freaks people out. Like the shooting of blanks is very realistic. It's very intense on these movie sets. And when something goes off when it's not supposed to, people are not happy. They don't feel safe. And apparently a bunch of them walked off. So they had issues here. The Singing Clown. What a great picture. Why isn't there more of a focus on how the heck Live Ammo got on the set? There was a long investigation. They couldn't really figure it out. I think they got it narrowed down. Either Hannah Gutierrez herself brought them from her home, or Seth Kenny and Sarah brought them onto the set. He was the supplier. There was a shortage of dummies because the show, what is it called? Is it called 1883 or 1853? Another big Western type of show was also filming at the same time, and they had gobbled up a lot of the dummy rounds in town. So they were having trouble actually getting dummy rounds. There was a shortage. It was an actual issue on this set. And that's the answer. That ultimately, I believe that's the answer as to how it happened, because there was a bit of a scramble. And in the haste and waste of the scramble, somebody messed up. Now, to get a little deeper into it, Hannah's father was training some actors on how to fire actual live rounds before they began filming their movies. So they became more comfortable with weapons and how they actually fire and what it really feels like. They weren't going to use live rounds for the filming, but in the preparation and the training for the filming, he was taking them to the range and showing them and teaching them. So he had live rounds at home. So the thought is perhaps one of those live rounds got mixed up in a box that said dummy rounds, and Hannah Gutierrez brought it to the set. So it would be Hannah that did it. Another theory is that the supplier, Seth Kenny, got him mixed up. And that's why he had Sarah throwing stuff away before, police were searching. Like one of the first things she's doing, she's literally throwing evidence away. So was she throwing away evidence of where the round could have come from because there were other rounds from this other supplier? So those are the two competing theories of this, but they haven't nailed it down. Michelle L., I understand what you're saying about accidents being tried as crimes, but all accidents aren't the same either, case by case, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree, case by case. But what we're seeing, and the trend that we're seeing in the law, is that the prosecutors are getting much more aggressive for accidental behavior, much more aggressive, like civil, like our civil side of the justice world doesn't mean anything when it does. It does have significant impact on behavior. It does have impact on deterrence. That's why, all those little stickers you see on everything, all of them are there because of a lawsuit, because of, some sort of defect that a manufacturer had in introducing a product into society, into our community. Well, so they're deterred from doing that because they get hit with lawsuits. Civil lawsuits in this act, would deter the action and make people be more careful in what they did. But the one I equate this to, which, accidental behavior, people that didn't want this to happen, didn't expect this to happen, but it did happen and they were held responsible. That police officer from Minneapolis, or from Minnesota, not from Minneapolis, but from Minnesota, Brooklyn, Minnesota, who thought she had a taser in her hand. And she's working her job. She's doing her job. She's got a suspect who is now fleeing in a car after, resisting arrest. And you've got an officer on the other side of the car who is getting dragged, and she wants to save that officer and stop this suspect from fleeing and making things very dangerous. So she warns him that she's going to use her taser, yells, "Taser, taser, taser," fires the weapon, but it's not a taser. And she was absolutely convinced in the moment that she had her taser, but she was held, like, civil responsibility is obvious there. Just write the check. But the criminal responsibility for an unintentional, accidental act, there was no ill intent. There was no bad faith. In the heat of a very stressful, traumatic moment, she grabbed the wrong weapon and didn't realize it. Well, she should have known, or she should have done this, or she should have done that. Okay. Well, that's where we are right now. And prosecutors coast to coast, extremely aggressive in criminal courtrooms for negligent behavior. Melly, not an Alec Baldwin fan, but I do love Beetlejuice. Thank you, Vinny, for another great stream. Don't forget to tune in to Closing Arguments tonight. Was he in Beetlejuice? Was he in Beetlejuice? I thought that was, what's his face? What the heck's his name? Michael something. All right, Laura is clear. This was the buffoon Hannah G's fault. This was a very serious, important job. This fool didn't take seriously. She should have been working retail somewhere or something instead. She wasn't ready for prime time. I agree, Laura. I mean, that's clear from everything. She cleaned up her act for trial, and I think she's grown up since. But that's too late for Helena Hutchins. Mm-hmm. Michael Keaton. Thank you, everyone. Beetlejuice. Michael Keaton. There we go. Michael Keaton. Lots of stars. Oh, maybe he was in it also. Alec. Oh, wait. Alec was the dead owner of the house. Okay. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. Mm-hmm. All right, folks. Over 4,000 today. Thank you so much. I didn't know how many we would get in the middle of everything happening right now, but appreciate it. Let me get over here. All right. So again, I think I'm going to lean towards doing some of these streams for the Baldwin case early in the morning. And I'll see how things pan out when I'm out there next week. I'm going to try to get you some live looks from the courthouse there. Maybe I'll try to do that in the morning. That would be interesting. So look forward to that next week. We've got the Tangent podcast coming up on Friday. Tomorrow, we'll see where we are. I'll be doing this story, but I'm going to keep my eye on everything else that's happening. Stephen Stearns, by the way, in the Madeline Soto case, another no-show for him. Still has not shown his face in a courtroom. I mean, this is, it's getting absurd at this point. He keeps waving, and not showing up. So I'm keeping an eye on all those other stories and cases. Had the great news in the Soraya Ung case. I don't know how many of you were following that. But the toddler from Washington, young father, took little Soraya, took her to Mexico with his fiance. They finally tracked him down. Soraya is back in her mom's arms, and grandma is there and had her on the show last night. And Aaron Ung is now in custody, waiting to be extradited. And we'll see what happens with the fiance. My guess is she'll end up being a witness in the case against him. But we'll see how that all works out. So I'm going to keep my eye on everything else that's happening in the world of true crime. But obviously, we'll be bringing you some of the big moments from this trial and try to get you folks a live look at the courthouse when I'm out there next week. So that's kind of where I am. So thank you, everyone, for watching. And I'll see you tonight, 8 o'clock on Court TV, as we break all of this down for you and have some news in the Karen Reed case. More developments today. So we'll get into that also tonight on the show. So thank you, everyone. Have a great, great night. Thank you to the mods getting it done. Our big mod squad getting bigger and bigger. Appreciate all the hard work. And I will see you at 8 o'clock tonight. I'm Vinny Politan. Don't forget to hug the kids.